Hi, Nat Richards from Text on the Move here, and this is a very unusual video for me to be making and then posting onto YouTube, which is something I do all the time, but of course this is a coronavirus world that we're living in now, and this video is built for a very different purpose. So I fully appreciate that there will be quite a few people out there in the big wide world who are used to watching me talk about life in Australia and what they might need to know to get down here. This video is actually though directed at those who have already made it to Australia. So I'm making this on March the 23rd, 2020. And of course, the situation with coronavirus in Australia, as it is around the world, is evolving very quickly and in very unexpected ways. We're all sort of in a bit of a state of shock, I think, and trying to figure out exactly where it leaves us standing, and things change all the bloody time. So right now, whatever information I put across in this video is accurate to the best of our knowledge today, though I appreciate that that will change. And really what I want to do now is answer some of the questions that technicians who are here working in Australia, usually on sponsored visas, have asked me over the last roughly 4 days or so as the situation's really started to escalate. I'm putting it out there for public consumption because I know there's a lot of people in this who maybe haven't yet asked the question but are thinking them or are looking for information on this for themselves. And you can get it from me here. I will update this information to reflect different things that the government or anyone else brings into this equation as I go. So please do not take this as the be all and end all forever. It's accurate today, and if it changes in a week or two, I'll update accordingly. So first things first. A question that I've had people asking me via text a lot is, can I talk to you? Yes, absolutely you can. And my number is not a secret, 0429 468 754 for anyone that's here with our help or is working in the motor industry and knows of us but hasn't used our help to get here. You're still very welcome to reach out and talk. Please don't hesitate to give me a call. Regular office hours would be appreciated if you can, but a little bit before, a little bit after. I'm not going to be too uptight about it. I realise the situation at the moment is pretty damn crazy. So I'd much rather people aren't suffering in silence and laying asleep at night stressed, wondering what ifs. Way better to ask, and I don't mind answering those questions. Flip me text if you want. Doesn't matter whether it's regular text message, WhatsApp, I don't care. Let me know. Email is nat.richards@textonthemove.com.au. I'm reading off a list, which is something I don't normally do for videos. So heaps of questions here. Have the Australian government changed any rules or communicated their position on sponsored visas? So this really is a bunch of questions for people on sponsored visas of some sort. 482s will be the most common. 457 if you've been here for quite some time. These answers are directed at you, not permanent residents who are in a very different situation altogether, and frankly a much better one, luckily for them. So no, the Australian government have not changed any of their legislation or any of their policies specific to your visas at all, and indeed haven't really done that for any of the visas. So the government have said for those who are stranded in Australia and should have been returning home either already or in the next couple of months whilst we expect the coronavirus thing to still have a proper hold on us, they're looking to make some of their guidelines and their processes more lenient and a little bit more flexible through that process. But for those who are here on visas right now that are sponsored, backed by skills and have a pathway to permanent residency or two, no, there's been absolutely no change communicated at all. And I wouldn't really be surprised if that remained exactly the case the whole way through this thing. So the next question, and I've had this most urgently from a few people who have moved from parts of the world where they really don't want to return, will the government deport me and or my family? And again, the answer on everything that we know right now and everything the legislation can tell us about this is absolutely not. So when you've come here as a skilled person on a temporary working visa like the 457 or the 482 that entitles or requires business sponsorship, there's absolutely no way that the government of Australia is going to just pluck you out of your job and send you home, even if that were practically possible, which at this point is absolutely not. So no, you've absolutely no concern about being deported for the fact that all of this is going on. It ain't going to happen. So please don't think that your entire future is about to be thrown to the wind because of what's come up. Challenge, yes. End of your time in Australia, no. This is probably a fairer question, or not fair in the sense that the other question is unreasonable, but fairer in the sense that I imagine more people are going to come up against this challenge, frankly. What happens if I lose my job? So we've not heard of this happening yet. I want to stress that. I've not had one single mechanic or other tradesperson call me up and say, I've just been given my marching notice, I'm done. Hasn't happened. We've talked to a lot of businesses so far already who are asking questions about their obligations and where they stand if things get really bad. Not once have we had someone say that we intend to fire someone or make them redundant and they're here on a temporary visa. It hasn't happened. But the answer still, I think, is worth me going into a little bit of detail with. So this is essentially the same question that you would have gotten any other, this is the same answer you would have gotten any other time you might ask this question of what happens if I lose my job? What happens if the business that I work in every day burns to the ground and I cannot work there again for an undisclosed period of time whilst they rebuild? It's essentially the same thing. The answer is, going by the government's legislation, which is absolutely still in effect, you have, by the letter of the law, 60 days to find another sponsor to take on your visa. The truth of the matter is that 60 days is a fairly sort of light-hearted timeline, really, and we've seen time and time again, not just in automotive, but in many, many different visa situations, that 60 days is really maybe around the sort of time where you'd start to have the government tapping you on the shoulder and saying, hey, what are you planning? What are you working on? Have you gotten much together in terms of finding another sponsor? It's not 60 days and on the 61st you're packed on a plane and sent home. It's pretty common knowledge that indeed that situation can draw out much longer if necessary, and it's not particularly uncommon for people in that situation, which is usually quite low numbers, to drag things out well beyond the 60-day mark and often a lot more than that. So please don't feel as though you're going to have, in the eventuality perhaps for some people that they do end up unfortunately losing their position, it does not mean that you're going to be cut off at the knees and you've got 60 days whether you like it or not and you're out. It just does not work that way. Now, what also might be faced, and I expect that this will probably be more common than people losing their jobs, of course, because it's going to happen to a lot of Aussies as well. Can my hours be reduced when I'm on a sponsored visa, 457 or 482? And how about unpaid leave if you're asked to take some of that from an Australian business? Or even can you be earning less for the same amount of work? Can you simply take a short-term pay cut to try to help a business stay solvent? The answer is yes to all of those things. So there's different things in the mix here. No coronavirus in place. It is entirely possible for someone on a sponsored visa to take an extended leave of absence from their employment and still keep the sponsorship alive. So simply walking away from work for a period of time does not mean that you're done. As long as you're doing that with the business's involvement, then that you can keep the visa alive. This situation is of course related to that. So if you had to take some time of unpaid leave for the business to stay open in some capacity, then yes, you can do that as long as there's consent from both parties. Can you go to more of a part-time arrangement? So of course anyone on one of these visas knows that it's a full-time gig that you need to maintain whilst you're here on that visa to live up to those conditions. However, I think desperate times call for desperate measures, and I sincerely doubt that the Australian government is going to get particularly hung up if someone has to knock the working hours back and reduce their pay level in step with that to help a business survive this whole scare. So no, I don't expect on a reasonable and rational level that the Australian government would hold that against you, because whilst yes, you would be breaking the conditions of your visa, no, I don't think that's a realistic thing. And admittedly, you've got to sort of step back, I think, and have a think about exactly why the government feels that way in the first place. I think it's fair to say that really what they want to do is make sure that anyone that's come here on a sponsored visa that is meant to only be a 4-year temporary deal until perhaps you go on to permanent residency in time, they don't want someone finding themselves out of work or not on sufficient enough work with enough pay to maintain their lives independently here in Australia. Their concern is that you're going to become a drag on the Australian welfare state, or that you'll go completely off the grid and disappear, and then they can't find you and figure out what you're doing. So far better you to take a bit of a pay cut on the chin or knock your hours back or whatever it might be to try to help everyone out in the same way Aussies are doing, but still remain completely a part of the system and working towards your long-term goal than the alternative. So the Australian government's got a hell of a lot more to worry about right now than a motor mechanic here or there who perhaps has to take a little bit of a haircut on pay for a while until a business can hopefully come out the other side of coronavirus. I would not get too upset about it. As a non-resident, so someone on a temporary visa, can I claim government support through this pandemic? So at this point, March 23rd, we don't really know a lot about exactly what the government stimulus packages that have been announced are going to do for individuals in different ways, or businesses to help people keep their staff on board and paid. I'm sure these details will become clearer and clearer as time goes on, and certainly, of course, I'll look to update. But technically speaking, by the letter of the law, of course, your regular temporary visa, such as 482, 457, does not entitle you to Australian government benefits in the same way that you would if you were a permanent resident or citizen. So unfortunately, that does mean that if you did lose your position, then you can't go down to the local Centrelink office or government services office and look for ongoing financial support. So you are admittedly in a more precarious position in that respect than what you would be if you were an Aussie permanent resident or citizen, which is unfortunate. However, I can't stress enough, if there's economic stimulus coming that is aimed at helping keep workers in place, and the government going to take some responsibility for trying to keep the economy up to speed through the automotive industry, who knows what to expect. Hopefully, if it gets to that point, they'll throw some love out to people who are not residents or citizens, but we'll see. If my visa is expiring soon, can I just carry on business as usual and blow through that expiry date because coronavirus is a thing that I can't control? No, is the short answer. It is absolutely not recommended. So if you're cruising around on our YouTube channel, you might see a bunch of videos that I've done in the last 48 hours or so, talking about specific conditions related to people facing expiries. Not necessarily that all that content is aimed at someone who's already here on 457 or 482. There can be some caveats to that. So please don't think that all that stuff is specific to your situation and should be taken on board. With that, Gavin and I are talking more directly to people who are here on shorter term tourist or visitor type visas who have found themselves unexpectedly stuck in Australia because as migration agents, we're looking to reach beyond our own typical catch here and help people out with some different circumstances. It's not exactly like we're going to be bringing many motor mechanics to Australia for the next little while. So if you do have a visa expiring soon, you should absolutely do something about it, whether that would be gaining another sponsored visa with your employer's assistance to stay legally in Australia. Applying for permanent residency, of course, is another option. So having that conversation with businesses might be a little bit difficult at the moment because I'm sure most Australian businesses in automotive, certainly in the car sector, are freaking out a bit and wondering what sort of financial stability they're going to have. So bankrolling permanent residency might become more challenging. That being said, becoming a permanent resident, of course, is the end goal for a lot of people, and coronavirus and its knock-on effects may not necessarily compromise that. So I would still have that certainly in the back of your mind. Do not let yourself go through that expiry date, though, of a current visa, if that's in the looming months, because ultimately, if you do and don't take any action at all, you put yourself well behind the eight ball of figuring out what happens next. If you've got an expiry coming up, we'll review all of the ones that we've been directly associated with over the last few years and notify people of that date if it's coming up for them. Take some responsibility for it yourself though, because ultimately I'm sure you know how long you've been here straight off the top of your head, where we may not. So if you've got an expiry coming up, please drop us a line and let us know so that we can try to create a plan here that works for everyone to keep you legally here rather than you lapsing over and becoming illegal. Because as far as the government is likely concerned, the fact that coronavirus is around and is a problem for our daily lives now is not a legitimate excuse to let your current visa run out and not have another one to replace it. That will create problems. Another good question, can I get a second job? So if you're a motor mechanic or other automotive tradesperson here on a sponsored visa of some form, and you're feeling a bit of economic pressure, or you're concerned that you might not get the same level of income from your regular job over the coming months, you're thinking about picking up a bit on the side. As far as current government legislation and policy is concerned, no. You can only work in the job that you've been sponsored to do and brought here specifically to do in the first place. So no, I don't think it would be a very good idea at all for you to go and pick up a secondary position that has you paying tax. So do not go, as yet, don't go down the road and find a job working for an independent garage that's prepared to employ you in a part-time role after you might finish your regular work, or for every other day where maybe you can't go to work for your regular job, and pick up another gig and start paying tax toward that. It's not a good idea. That might change. If you can find other work that doesn't have you paying tax, that's your business. But that is certainly something I would say do not do, because it may create problems for whatever visa application comes next. If I lost my job or had insufficient opportunity to earn, can I get another job? What might be the best way to go about that? So if you're currently in a sponsored position and you're talking with your management or HR in that business and things are not looking great and you're not exactly sure what's going to happen next, and you're feeling maybe you need to move to a different position where the outlook is a bit rosier, or there's more opportunity to earn what you would regularly expect to earn and keep yourself and perhaps your family afloat, that's a very understandable thing. You do need to stay in your occupation at this point as a sponsored person. And of course, you need to be legally employed by a new sponsor. So you do need to move your visa across to another business, which is a formality that the government will absolutely still allow through these hard times and that we can help with wherever the opportunity pops up. I would anticipate that passenger vehicle businesses are going to take some tap here for a while. It's going to be hard going. We believe that maybe diesel-based businesses are going to be a little bit easier to get along with for a while. So if you're a car mechanic in a business that is ailing and you're not able to support yourself fully and you've got some concerns about that, I would consider perhaps if it's possible for you to flip across and spend some time doing some heavy diesel stuff. Maybe worth exploring. Don't knee-jerk it though. Talk to your business, talk to your managers. You've come across here for a reason on a sponsored visa, and just because everyone's panicky doesn't mean that you should throw the baby out with the bathwater just yet. I'd say hunker down, do what's best for the business and for yourself. Talk to everyone and keep the lines of communication open, and perhaps have a move toward the diesel sector as a pivot strategy if you have to. For those that are thinking that way, let us know, and we'll try to figure out the best way for everyone moving forward. The last point I had, is it wise to try and get permanent residency if possible through this time? Absolutely yes. So there's some complicating factors there. We don't know what sort of openness to moving ahead with permanent residency visas that the various state and governments would have, and obviously the Australian government. It's fair to suggest, perhaps, I think that we're going to be pretty slow going there for quite some time whilst this all shakes out. It's simply not going to be the government's priority. That being said, if a business that you're working for is able and willing to sponsor you for permanent residency through this time for whatever reason, I would absolutely want to talk with them about that if I were on a sponsored visa. It is an expensive process, of course, so you've got to be able to financially bankroll a move to permanent residency yourself. So that's a big investment at a time where money might be hard to come by, but all of that we can talk about if you'd like. So that's a bunch of questions shot from the hip. If you've got any more, please don't hesitate to let me know. I'd rather people didn't ask questions too much in comments on this video, please. Not because I want to hide the answers in any way, shape or form, but because I appreciate some people's circumstances are going to be quite private. So please reach out to me directly instead. You can let me know that you want to talk through comments if you like, but I'd much prefer you please reach out to me directly. So that's email nat.richards@techsonthemove.com.au, or of course mobile, WhatsApp, calls, text, whatever, 0429 468 754. That's it. All the best to everybody out there. I hope everyone that we've met along the way stays healthy and as happy as possible. We'll certainly be putting on a brave face, and we are not going anywhere. So please don't expect that with the close of the borders we're completely done and we're out. That is not the case. It's going to take a bit more than that to kill Gavin and I. So don't be a stranger. Let us know what's going on. Here to help however we can. Thanks, guys.